What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to From The Bench Vols. I'm your host, Will Meadows, and welcome to our Friday edition of the show, where we have football, a little bit of basketball to talk about, some transfer portals, some recruiting for basketball, and the NFL draft started last night. At the time of this recording, it has not yet started, and we're going to talk about some guys from this past Tennessee team and where they could get drafted in this year's NFL draft, and then where this team kind of compares when it comes to league-ready guys from this year to this next year. And the NFL talent Josh Heupel and his staff are producing. But before we get into any of that, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and leave a comment on where you want to see your favorite player, or your favorite player like a Dylan Sampson or a James Pierce or one of those guys, where you want to see them go in the NFL draft this weekend. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the recruiting and the transfer portal things, and then our longer segment of the day is going to be the NFL draft side of things. So first, transfer portal. We've got not a lot going on. Obviously, we got our quarterback after a crazy few weeks or week or two that we had, losing a quarterback, getting a quarterback. Now everything's kind of dialed down, come back down to earth. But one guy that the Vols are very much targeting is transfer from BYU wide receiver Keelan Marion. Was an All-American kick returner, so doesn't have wasn't a crazy receiver at BYU last year, but really a guy that you can get the ball in his hands and just say, watch out, because he is can make a lot of people miss in open space. I mean, like I said, All-American kick returner, and obviously would be an incredible kick returner for us as well. Him and Boo Carter both returning kicks would be dangerous. I'd go out on a limb and say that that's the best return group tandem in the country. A guy that we're really going after, he's set up visits with 4 schools. I know Miami and SMU are 2 of them. Obviously, we're another, and I couldn't remember what the last one is, but I know we're the last one, so hopefully, saving the best for last here, but hopefully he enjoys his visit. Could be a big get for the Vols, whether he's that good of a receiver or not. It's an experienced guy and much-needed depth at a much-needed position, especially with a new quarterback, so it's obviously hard to recruit wide receivers when they don't know who the quarterback's going to be. The quarterback situation is somewhat figured out now. Obviously, it's still going to be a competition between Merklinger, McIntyre, and Aguilar, but hope we can get a guy like Keelan Marion, just an explosive play waiting to happen. And on the basketball side of things, this one is very interesting. So another 5-star. Rick Barnes is trying to get Darius Adams, a top 20 player in the country, a McDonald's All-American. Obviously, we're switching sports here, by the way. I didn't really say that, but these are just the recruits in transfer portals. But 5-star Darius Adams was committed to the University of Connecticut, the UConn Huskies, and has recently decommitted 5 days ago. And the Vols were in his top 3. His top 3 was UConn, Michigan State, and Tennessee. And Tennessee played a big part in his recruitment earlier. And I think that there's a very good chance that the Tennessee and Rick Barnes can go after this guy. Obviously, we talked a lot about Rodney Rice, and a guy that was a former teammate of Jacoby Gillespie last year at Maryland, seemed to like his visit here at the University of Tennessee. He ended up committing to the USC earlier this week, so that shooting guard spot is still definitely needed to be filled. So I think a guy like Darius Adams, like I said, a 5-star, could really come in and make some things happen. A good defender, a good playmaker as well, and I really do think things could get scary. You got Jacoby Gillespie, Darius Adams, Nate Mint, Jalen Carey, and Felix Akpar is an incredible lineup. It is an incredible lineup. Things could get scary quick in a good way for the Vols, and it's kind of a good mix of, you got 2 very highly rated freshmen, but then you've got experienced guys like Gillespie, Akpar, or Cade Phillips that are coming in experienced and can kind of level that out, kind of like Duke had this year, where they had, they were a little different side of the freshman things, but they also evened it out with their experience with guys like Tyrese Proctor and Malik Brown and people like that. So, I've told you guys on the last episode, I really do believe when it's all said and done, this team could end up being built to be one of the best teams that Rick Barnes has had since he arrived to the University of Tennessee. And adding Darius Adams to that would only help. The 2 are set to meet this week, and I do think that it's a very high possibility. I know North Carolina's reached out. I know Alabama's reached out, but Darius Adams, a very highly coveted recruit, McDonald's All-American, just on the EYBL circuit was great. Would be a huge pickup for the Tennessee Volunteers on the basketball side of things. So that kind of wraps up just our recruitment and transfer portal things. Again, not too much going on, obviously, after a bananas few weeks. But like I said, the NFL draft is here. It started last night. By the time you're watching this, as of right now, it hasn't started yet at the time of this recording. But there's some guys from this good Tennessee team that made a playoff run that are going to get drafted this year. Now, maybe not as many as you may think, just because of how good our team was last year. But number one, the guy who was preseason mocked number one before the college football season started, he was a lot of people thought that he could go number one. He has definitely fallen since then. He is a question mark to go in the first round, but I definitely think he is a first round guy, and James Pierce Jr. I could very much see him going to the Bengals. I guess at 17, I could see him going in the last pick of the first round. At 32 to the Eagles, I could see him going. I think it's 15 or 14, something like that. Maybe not 15 or 14. Wherever the Falcons are at, they need an edge rusher, and I could really see them going there. So at the time of this recording, like I said, it hasn't started, but it's going to be very interesting to see where James Pierce goes because, in my opinion, I think he is going to be a very, very good NFL player. Long, athletic, long arms, has really developed in the run game, and I think that he can make a big difference at the next level. Another guy that is probably going to be the next pick out of these Volunteers is Omar Norman Lott. And again, you may not be thinking that just off the top of your head, just with him not being one of the biggest names that we had last year, but such a quick, twitchy defensive tackle. May not be the biggest at that position, but like I said, his hands are heavy, his feet are quick, and he just gets out of a three-point stance quickly. I think obviously that just goes to show that he's a second-round pick in most mock drafts, and I could very much see him going second. And as a Buffalo Bills fan, I'd love to see him go to my Buffalo Bills. Omar Norman Lott, was one of my favorite players on this Tennessee team last year, and just goes to show you how good our defensive line was last year, man, because I'll give you a hint on these top 5 guys for next year. Three of them are defensive linemen, so it goes to show you how good our D-line was really last year, but James Pierce and Omar Norman Lott both going maybe the first 2 rounds is really incredible by Rodney Garner and the rest of this coaching staff getting guys drafted at that defensive line position. And then another guy, obviously the fan favorite, the guy who we owe a lot of thanks to for a lot of points last year, Dylan Sampson. This NFL draft is loaded with running backs. It's arguably one of the more impressive and more stacked running back classes in recent history. The year Kamara was drafted was really good for running backs, but there's a lot of good running backs, and we all know it's headlined by the near Heisman winner, Ashton Jeanty. But Dylan Sampson could go really anywhere, in my opinion, from as early to the second round. That's maybe a kind of a push, but from the third to the fifth round, Mel Kiper really likes him, man. He's a big play waiting to happen, a home run waiting to happen, in Mel Kiper's words. And I do think that Dylan Sampson can find a home in the NFL and be very, very, very productive. Where that is, I'm not for sure. I think a place like the Cardinals playing behind James Conner could be a very good place for him. I think a place like the Packers playing behind Josh Jacobs could be a very good place for him. I don't think he's going to be drafted to be a bell cow anywhere, but I do think he could make or help construct a very, very productive 1-2 punch at the next level. And I think that he's, in my opinion, a top 5 back in this draft. Is that a little, that's not crazy to say, but is that a little biased? Maybe. Obviously, the Ashton Jeanty's, Marion Hampton's, Cam Scatterbo, Caleb Johnson, and then probably Dylan Sampson for me. Travion Henderson is up there as well, Quinshon Judkins. So, like I said, just a loaded running back class, but Dylan Sampson is definitely going to find a home in the next 2 to 3 days. And then another one, we talked about it before, just had an incredible day at the NFL Combine. Dante Thornton was 6'5" and ran like a 4.24. Just ridiculous. I don't know if it was that fast. I'm just saying, like, he ran fast, man. And that helped his draft stock a lot because he really showed nothing more than being a big play threat, which is that good? Yes, but you got to show, a little more variety as a receiver, and him running that fast really helped his draft stock. I could see him as early as a round 3 pick, or I could see him as a round 5 guy. Me personally, being kind of brutally honest, I don't know if he'll be a third-round guy, just because, again, he didn't show much outside of didn't show much in his route tree outside of a deep ball. But you can't teach athlete. You can't teach 6'5" and 4.2 speed. You can teach people to run routes. His hands, he's shown progression in his time at college, which is, at that, it's a very good trait to have. As a junior, or maybe not a junior, I guess it was a junior. His first year at UT struggled to stay on the field, struggled to remember plays, struggled to catch the ball, really, had drop problems. And then last year, he was arguably our best receiver. In my opinion, he was our best receiver. So who knows? I think he could end up as early as the third round. And if a team's willing to reach on an athlete like that, he could end up in the second round. But it's going to be very interesting to see where Dante Thornton goes. Another guy that I'd love to see my Bills take a chance on. And I really think his deep ball ability and deep ball threat could really open up my Bills offense. But y'all are not here to listen to me talk about the Buffalo Bills. And then some question mark guys. Those 4 guys are for sure going to get drafted. And then 2 question mark guys. Big bad Elijah Simmons. We know how big of a mammoth that dude is, a monster at nose tackle. Just didn't show a ton in the pass rush side of things. Obviously being that big, it's kind of difficult. But plugging the run, I mean, you can't teach size either. I think Elijah Simmons will end up being drafted just for a team who wants to help plug the run and be a second, first down guy and a rotational piece on an NFL defensive line. And then Brew McCoy, the fan favorite again. I think he has the smallest chance to get drafted, But I do think if he gets drafted before he can even get to that facility, they're going to change him to a tight end. Just not fast enough to play receiver at the next level. But he's a big body guy, and he blocks really well, and he breaks tackles incredibly. Like, he does not go down to one tackle at all. And I really think that he could put on a couple more pounds of weight, and an NFL team will switch him to a tight end. And I think he could be very good there. A downfield threat at the tight end position. And like I said, a very good blocker, but he'll have to put on some weight and put on some muscle to be able to chip at defensive ends and linebackers and things of that nature. But Brew McCoy, another guy that could end up getting drafted. So that leaves you with about 6 guys that have a real chance at getting drafted, which is good. I mean, that's not everybody's the Georgias and the Michigans and the Ohio States and Alabamas of the world where they just have 11 guys getting drafted. It's incredible that Josh Heupel has produced maybe what we may see as 6 NFL draft picks. That's really, really good, especially in the state of the NCAA where people are transferring, left and right. And speaking of transferring, Jacoby Thomas, safety, just hit the transfer portal. Just thought of that as I was talking about that. But, it just goes to show. It seems like there's one every day, a guy into the transfer portal. So to be able to send 6 guys possibly to the next level, big clap it up moment for Josh Heupel and his staff, and a big clap it up to Rodney Garner and that defensive line and everything else. And you're about to hear me talk about guys that could get drafted on next year's team, and it's a lot of defensive linemen. I'll go ahead and say that right now. So we'll just kind of carry on into that segment right now. Top 5 guys on this year's team that I think will get drafted next year. And number 1, arguably, he could be the number 1 DB drafted next year. Number 1, number 2. It depends if you count Caleb Downs as a safety or a DB, but Jermod McCoy. It's going to be interesting to see him come back from his injury. Praying for him. Obviously, it was a knee replacement, just not replacement, but a knee injury. I think it was an ACL, just like me. Not that matters, but a guy that has so much upside, was incredible for the Vols last year, an All-American, and like I said, could be one of the first DBs taken off the board next year. And then another guy, I'll go ahead and tell you right now, you wouldn't expect this from 2 to 3 years ago if I told you this about a Josh Heupel team, but all 5 of these guys are on the defensive side of the football. So second most likely to get drafted, in my opinion, is Joshua Josephs, a guy who was arguably our most productive player on the defensive line this year, on that loaded defensive line. Showed he could stop the run, had quite a bit of TFLs, but also got after the quarterback at a very effective rate. Can line up with his hand in the dirt, or he can line up in a sprinter's position. He's very versatile defensive end, and I think he's going to play or be able to plug and play at the next level. I think he's going to have a very productive year at Tennessee this year, and I think he is maybe a guy who could also go first round at that edge position next year in the NFL draft. And then we'll move to linebacker. you got Arion Carter, a guy who's a great athlete, was good last year, is the leader of this defense, him and Jeremiah Thielander. But I think just athlete-wise, Arion Carter, his ability to cover as a linebacker and just wrap up as a linebacker, I feel like Arion Carter has a very good chance to get drafted next year. And then my two final ones, this is kind of a toss-up between the two. But Don Bailey and Bryson Eason, older guy to the defensive line position. But again, guys like Elijah Simmons, where I feel like they can just be rotational pieces and really help this team a lot this year. And like I said, I think that especially a Don Bailey as a pass rusher exclusively can get their way into the NFL. But I think that is going to wrap up our show for today. Again, I do appreciate you guys for coming to watch. Let me know where you guys want to see these Vols get drafted this year. Like I said, there's about two guys. I mean, I'll take them all as a Buffalo Bills fan, but I really think Omar Norman-Lott and Dante Thornton could be big additions to my Buffalo Bills. And let me know what your guys' favorite NFL team is. I know a lot of Tennessee Titans fans. It's looking pretty certain that it's Cam Ward with that first pick tonight, so let me know how you guys feel about that. But again, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment. Make sure you share it to your mother, your grandmother, your auntie, whoever you want to share it to. Sorry, got a lot of loss for words there. Follow the Instagram. Follow the TikTok. It's _FromTheBench. Follow the Twitter. Follow it all, man. I really do appreciate you guys and your support in the last few weeks. I know there's been so much going on in the world of Tennessee athletics. But again, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week, and go Vols.